Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Irgin Shir Torah Moses Bus. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. I'd like to give a big yeshikach to Mr. and Mrs. Dovi Nierenberg sponsoring tonight's shir. And we'd like to remind the Olam that Irgin Shir Torah's annual dinner is coming in just 2 short weeks. Use this opportunity to show Hakaras HaTov to the Rabbanim whose shiurim you've enjoyed, and share Hakaras HaTov to Irgin Shir Torah and have a chelek. Now, Batz's Torah of Irgin Shir Torah worldwide by putting an ad in the journal that will be published in honor of the event. Call Irgin Shir Torah 718-851-8651. Or you can email to tapecenter@yeshivanet.com. Tonight we have the cover tab with us once again, Rabbi Mordechai Becher, Shlita, Senior Lecturer at Gateway Seminar, to discuss the important topic of no matter how far, the eternal Jewish Neshama. It's my cover to call in Rabbi Becher, Shlita, for tonight's drasha.
Thank you. Should be all right. Thank you. First of all, I asked Mechila that I wasn't shaking hands because I'm not feeling well. I don't want to spread the cheer. So, 1391, in the north of Spain, there were riots, massive riots that broke out, attacking the Jewish community. And thousands were killed, and thousands, tens of thousands, converted to Christianity. Some of them were actual Christians, but many of them, we do not know percentages, but many of them were what we call anusim, meaning, or crypto-Jews. They were Jews secretly, and they kept Christianity on the surface. To all effects and purposes, they acted as Christians. Some of these families, most of these families lived in Spain for literally hundreds of years. Till 1492, Spain expelled all practicing Jews, but the Anusim stayed, most of them. 1497, and many of them went to Portugal. 1497, Portugal had a decree of expulsion, and many Jews there became Anusim, crypto-Jews. So let's imagine what would happen 200 years later. Someone from 1391 until 1550, 1600s has been raised as a Christian. The only schools he's been going to are Christian schools. All of his chinuch, formal chinuch, has been Christian. His parents have to hide all of their Yiddishkeit. What do they keep? Very, very minimum. Very minimum. We don't know exactly. We have evidence that one family kept this, one family kept that. We don't exactly know how much they kept. Tanis Esther was kept because they saw Esther as one of the first crypto-Jews, one of the first hidden Jews. So Tanis Esther. Some people avoided pork. Not so easy. If you're at a meal with someone, you avoid it, immediately suspicion would be cast upon you. They weren't even sure when to tell their children that they were actually Jews. When do you tell the children? You tell them when they're too young, they'll blurt it out on the playground, etc., and you'll be arrested by the Inquisition. You wait too long, the kids themselves will be committed, and they'll inform on you to the Inquisition. So when do you even tell them? So imagine a scenario like that, and then keep doing that for 200 years. Anyone going to stay Jewish? Is it conceivable? The answer is it's inconceivable, but it actually happened. At this time, Jews, who, actually many of them, who left the Iberian Peninsula when things were let up a bit, 1600s, etc., 1500s, 1600s, and they went to Hamburg and Amsterdam and other places in Europe where Jews had relative freedom. What did they do? They joined the Jewish community. That's unbelievable. All you know about Judaism, all you know about the Torah is from learning in a Christian school, which I'm not so sure if you're knowing Torah, if that's what you did. Right? All you keep of Yiddishkeit is maybe avoiding pork, possibly Tanis Esther, maybe here and there, I don't know what. There were some who had cholent, a form of cholent, We know that from Ben-Sion Netanyahu, Binyamin Netanyahu's father, who is a famous historian. He wrote books on the Inquisition. In fact, one of the greatest acts of diplomacy of Binyamin Netanyahu was when first time he met the Pope, he gave the Pope his father's book about the Inquisition. I love that. That's like, guy deserves credit just for that. Anyway, so Ben-Sion Netanyahu actually, in one of the transcripts of an interrogation of Jews, the maid, who was not Jewish, testified that they would be very careful to have a recipe every Saturday that consisted of a stew that would sit on the fire for 12, 15, 16 hours. The earliest recipe we have for cholent, ironically, is from an Inquisition interrogation. You wouldn't imagine that the Yiddishkeit would stay, and yet it did. These Jews, many of them, not all of them, but there were many of them. In fact, there are any is miraculous, but many returned to the Jewish community. There was a French documentary called The Last Jews about a village in Portugal of Jews, Anusim, who to this day, they would get together once a week and recite Shema Yisrael together. That's all they knew of Yiddishkeit. That's it. In fact, for many, many years, they thought they were the last Jews, hence the name of the documentary. Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. So that's one example. Sometimes it's even more tenuous, if you can imagine. Kaifeng, China. Jews came there in, we're not exactly sure, but probably 11th, 12th century. And there was no anti-Semitism. And they had no Talmidei Chachamim. They were very far away from any centers of Yiddishkeit. They assimilated. They intermarried. They assimilated. Their descendants are not halachically Jewish. They know that they're from these Kaifeng Jews. That's all they know. They have souvenirs with yarmulkes made in Kaifeng. So they're in, clothing retail. So there is some Jewish, whatever. So, but they have this. So what's amazing is one of them decided to go to Israel and study for a year at Bar Ilan University. He learned Hebrew. I met him when I was there. And 10 young Kaifeng, they're not Jews, but 10 young Kaifeng Jewish descendants decided to go to Israel and to be Mizgayer. 10 of them Mizgayer. I mean, how tenuous is the spark of Yiddishkeit from Eretz Yisrael to Persia, and from Persia to Kaifeng, China, and then Kaifeng, China back to Israel? That's mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. There are Jews in India, where I'm going next week, called the B'nai Israel. The B'nai Israel, the Rambam already writes about them in a tshuva to Chachmei Lunil, that he says the Jews in India don't even know Torah Shebichsav. They have no knowledge of Gemara, Torah Shebal Peh. They don't even have Torah Shebichsav. He says all they know is Shema Yisrael and Bris Milah and maybe Shabbos. It's the Rambam writes. And actually that's for years that was accurate. The B'nai Yisrael, but they didn't assimilate. Partially that's because of the caste system in India, which you only marry into very specific groups and castes, etc. And so, which was actually good. But they had nothing, no knowledge, until in the 19th century, Jews from Cochin and Baghdad came and taught them Torah and Yiddishkeit, and they accepted it. Amazing. Amazing. So this indeed is the pasuk in Hosea. V'haya mispar b'nei Yisrael k'chol hayam shelo yimad v'lo yisafer. The Jews, the number of the Jews will be like B'nai Yisrael, will be like the sand of the sea, which will not counted, not measurable, not counted. V'haya b'mokom asher yam elahem lo yamiyatem yam elahem b'nei Elchai. And in place of saying, you are not my people, Hashem will say, B'nei Kelchai, they are the children of the living God. How do we understand that? B'mokom sheyomar asher ya'amer lahem lo yamiyatem. Instead of people saying, you're not my people, Hashem will say, B'nai Kel Chai, no, they are my children. And the Gemara in Kiddushin, beautifully, according to Rabbi Meir, has a drosha here. The Gemara in Kiddushin, Rabbi Meir says, Bein kachu bein kach, whatever the Jews do, kriyim bonim, they're always called children of Hashem. Always. And it says bonim, and he brings a pasuk in Yirmiyah, bonim sichlim heima, they are foolish children. And another pasuk, bonim lo emun bam, children without faith. Another pasuk, zera mereim banim ashchisim, evil seed, banim ashchisim, corrupt children. And then Hosea, b'nei kel chai. So why, the Gemara asked, why do you have to bring 4 psukim to prove 1 point? The Gemara says, very simple. Says this, you might think that only if they're sichlim, they're foolish, as the Maharal explains, they're doing sins b'shoigeg, they're ignorant, they're fools. They're still called children of Hashem, they're still called bonim. But if they do them deliberately, definitely not. So in that the pasuk says, banim lo emun bam, even if they don't have emunah, even if they're deliberate, not just a matter of ignorance, not just a matter of foolishness, they don't believe, they're still bonim. And maybe you'll tell me, yeah, but okay, they don't believe, but maybe they're not doing some serious aveirus. Maybe they're not, who knows, if they're doing avodah zarah, idolatry, maybe they're still not bonim. So in that, the next pasuk comes and says, zera mereim bonim mashchisim, even though they are doing evil and they are corrupt, meaning even though they are devoted to idolatry, avodah zarah, they're still bonim. Bonim hu demikre, they're still children. Now you might say, okay, they're still called children even after, clearly the person arguing here is a Litva, right? But you might say even, right? Even after all this, sorry, no offense to Litva. Okay, but even after this, okay, they're foolish, they're still called children. They don't have emunah, they're still called children of Hashem. They are worshipping avodah zarah, they're still called children of Hashem. But maybe they're not called banim ma'ale lonikru. They're not children par excellence, banim ma'alia. They're not definite, they're not complete children. Maybe they're just like quasi, a foster child, a stepson, etc. So on that it says, V'haya b'mokom asher yamar lehem lo yamiyatem yomar lehem b'nei kel chai. They are said they are still children. So even in places where you might say, as a result of their sins, they're not children, they are still the children of Hashem. Bonim ma'aliyah. Amazing Gemara. The Maharal in Netzach Yisrael is the Maharal's book about exile. It's his sefer about exile. The first person to write sforim which were topical, like a sefer about exile, a sefer about Torah, a sefer about this. It was the Maharal. It's a very unique style. So Netzach Yisrael literally means the eternity of Klal Yisrael. Also means the victory. So that's a book about Golus, about exile. And in that book he says the following. He says, why is it that we're still called children even if we are ignorant, even if we don't believe, even if we worship idols, and we're still considered banim ma'alya? We're still 100% children of Hashem. So the Maharal explains in his classic style, he says, since HaKadosh Baruch Hu is our Father, He is the ilah, the cause of that relationship, we are the alul, we are the caused, the effect of that relationship. He says, inasmuch all we can do is affect ourselves, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still our Father. We can't affect the ilah, the cause. And so he says, that's what he's saying, even if we're choitim b'shgaga, we're still Hashem's children. Even if we're deveikim legamrei ba'avodah zarah, completely devoted to avodah zarah, still Hashem's children. Because, he says, all of the flaw is only in us. But inasmuch as the ilah, the cause of that relationship is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we have not touched that cause, we have not severed his relationship because he still wants it. We are therefore still bonim, still children. And he goes on to say, V'im halchu achayitzram, even when we follow our evil inclination, our yetzer hara. So he says, thank you, Ein ze mitzad atzmam. That's not something essential. This is like a second svara, I think. He's saying the evil that we do is not the essence of who we are. He says, Raku davar mikre. It is something which is a side, a coincidence, a happenstance. It's not my essence. It's something which is not me. Kaven shem toivim mitzadatzmam, and therefore, because we are good, in and of intrinsically created good, therefore he says, Shekach nivru min Hashem yisbarach, ze nikru banei ma'alei, therefore we are called excellent, superb children. 100% children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's an amazing, amazing idea. And we find a number of cases like the Rambam was confronted by a situation, very famous Igeres Teiman, that he wrote to the Jews of Yemen, and who had been persecuted by Muslims. There were many Jews who had converted to Islam under the threat of death. And after the persecution was over, not completely, but mostly over, there was also a false Messiah at the time, Mashiach Sheker, etc. There are many, many issues they had. The Rambam wrote a beautiful letter, which really, it saved lives. And his letter, the Yemenite Jews considered this to be the letter that saved them. To the extent the Ramban writes in one of his letters, writes in one of his letters defending the Rambam, that he says that in his time, the Jews of Yemen used to mention the Rambam in Kaddish. They'd say, B'chayeichon of yomeichon, in your days and in your life, u'v'chayei marana Moshe, and in the life of our master Moshe, and so on and so forth. We actually know from the Cairo Geniza that it was not uncommon to do that. There are communities that would mention all the Rosh Yeshivas and Rabbonim in Kaddish. Right? You think Kaddish is long now, like you can imagine. Right? Anyway, so, but the Yemenite Jews were very devoted to the Rambam. But the Rambam writes in Igeres Teiman, one of the issues that he was discussing was there were Rabbonim and communities who were Jews who had converted to Islam. They said, no, you cannot come back. You are no longer Jewish. You're an apostate. You're a mumar. Right? And you are no longer welcome back because you are no longer Jewish. That was one of the issues. And the Rambam writes beautifully, Zois HaTorah lo yimalet mimena echad mizera Yaakov le'olam. This Torah, not one descendant of Yaakov will escape from it ever. Lohu v'lo zera zara, not he, not his children, or his children's children, yirtzeh or lo yirtzeh, whether he wants it or not. Hu ne'nash al kol mitzvah or mitzvah, every single mitzvah, he'll be punished for. Lo yale al daita, don't ever think that with sheyasa averos chamuros, that when you do serious averos, that now exempts you from the light ones. He says, Yerovam ben Nevat, shchikat samos, Yerovam ben Nevat, who chata v'hichte es Yisrael, he sinned and he caused the Jews to sin. He says, Nenash al shel bitel mitzvahs sukkah. He will also be punished for not sitting in the sukkah. You imagine coming to Yerovam ben Nevat and saying, listen, you're not sitting in the sukkah. I mean, he's oived avodah zorah. He set up idols. He prevented the Jews from coming to Yerushalayim. And you're telling him don't sit in the sukkah? Unbelievable. There's a story mentioned in Orchos Chaim. It's in the Siddur Agra. The Gra was sitting in some type of inn. The inns were generally owned by Jews. And sitting with some Talmidim. And a mumar comes in. An apikoros comes in. I don't know how he knew he was an apikoros, with a t-shirt, apikoros and proud, or so, I don't know what. In any case, he comes in and he asks the innkeeper, he says, for some wine, for some liquor, yain sraf. He says, yeah, give me a whiskey, single malt. Right? Probably it was vodka, I'm pretty sure. Right? So the Gra says to the innkeeper, don't give it to him. He won't make a bracha. The guy says, are you kidding? He says, do you know the Averis that I do? He says, I'm an apikoros. And the Gra says, so what? You haven't exempted yourself from the mitzvah, the Rabbanon, of saying a bracha before you drink. He says, you are expected to do every single mitzvah in the Torah, no matter what you have done until now. According to the story, he burst into tears and did tshuva on the spot. This hasn't worked for me, but nevertheless, I guess you have to be the gro, right? But so this is what happened. Rav Moshe Shapiro was once in a taxi with a friend of mine, and so I heard it from my friend. He's sitting in the back, Rav Moshe's sitting in the front seat, and taxi driver, as they're driving, he says to Rav Moshe, he says, "Ichpat lecha im ani yotzer, ani rotze liknot falafel." Yeah. Do you mind if I stop and get a falafel? Rav Moshe said, "Yeah, okay, fine." So he stops, he jumps out, meter's still running. He jumps out, he gets a falafel, he comes back. So my friend is sitting in the back saying, he's driving a shift and he's eating a falafel. I mean, it's like, okay, whatever. Right? If Israeli taxi drivers not give you emunah, nothing will help you. No, right. So anyway, he's about to bite it. Rav Moshe Shapiro looks at him and he says, "Bli netilat yadayim, bli bracha." No washing, no bracha. And the guy says, "Ani lo dati," not religious. So Rav Moshe says, "Azma," like, so what? And he says, "Rebbe, ani yoseh averot chamurot. I do some serious sins." So Rav Moshe says to him, "Azma, so what? It means you cannot make a bracha. The guy says, "Ani ekach et hakol b'sitonaut." I will take all my punishments in bulk. Sitonaut. So Rav Moshe looks at him and he says, "Ta yodea she'ata medaber shtuyot, ken? You know you're speaking idiocy, right?" And the guy says, "Ken, ani yodea. I know." He made a bracha, he ate the falafel. My friend told me, Rabbi Karsh, that it was the quietest, heaviest silence in a car journey he's ever had in his entire life. Right? There's all you could hear is just the motor and the guys eating falafel, and there's complete silence. I don't know what happened to this taxi driver, but it's the story of the Gra. It's a similar story. And that's what Rav Moshe was saying. Azma, so what? I once got into a taxi outside our yeshiva in Unsdorf, one of the 7 dwarfs. And there are 7 dwarfs, as matters of the Sheva Kehilos. I don't know why that is funny. Okay, in any case, so I get into the taxi. Taxi driver is apparently not religious. I mean, he wasn't wearing a yarmulke, but that doesn't necessarily mean not religious. Okay. So he looks at me and he says, "Talomed po? You learn here." I said, "Ken." He says, "Ezo shi'ur." Whose shi'ur? I'm thinking to myself, how on earth would he even have any idea? Like, what? So I said, Rav Moshe Shapiro. It was in his Gemara sheet. He says, "Biglalo ani shomer Shabbat." Because of him, I keep Shabbos. I said, "Tagid, tell me." He says, "Okay." He says, "I see him. He had moved into a new building, in a new apartment in Beit Vegan, Rehov Uziel, if I remember correctly. And his daughter was sick, and they needed a ground floor apartment. So they moved into that. So the taxi driver says that he's leaving for work. He sees the new neighbor, looks like a ish mechubad, an honorable man, looked like an important person. He sees he's late. It seems to be, it's about to rain. So he opens the door, he says, "Harav, tikanes, nikach otcha." "Rabbi, get in, I'll give you a ride. So Rav Moshe says, "Toda Rabba." So he gets in. I did not hear this from Rav Moshe. I heard this from the taxi driver. The taxi driver says, "Lakachti et hamafteach." I took the key. I'm about to put it into the ignition. He says, Rav Moshe puts his hand on my hand. And he says to me, "Ata lo nosea b'Shabbat, Ken? You don't drive on Shabbat, do you?" And the taxi driver said, "Hayiti nosea b'Shabbat." I did travel on Shabbat. Aval histakalti be'enav, lo hayiti achol lagid ken. I looked into his eyes and I could not say yes. I felt it would just hurt him, so I couldn't say yes. He says, on the other hand, I couldn't say no. I'm not a liar. I'm not going to say no, I don't drive on Shabbat. That's a lie. He says, I couldn't say yes. I couldn't say no. I said, Mazkara. He said, Nishbati. B'oto rega, I made an oath at that moment in my head that I would no longer drive on Shabbat. And I honestly answered him, Lo, ani lo nosea b'Shabbat. No, I do not drive on Shabbat. And Rav Moshe said, Yafeh, sa, wonderful, let's go. Unbelievable. Now, I would not recommend trying this at home. You'll end up with the keys in your ear or nostril or something, right? But you have to have a certain presence and love and a recognition that he is Jewish. And that deep down, at what he wants to do is serve Hashem, like the very famous halacha in the Rambam. When a beis din, we know that a divorce, a get, which is forced upon someone against their will, is not valid. Get mu'useh, it's not valid. But if the beis din has the right to tell you to divorce, what if so how does that work? And the beis din is allowed to force the person to write the get. They can beat him to within an inch of his life. They can, I don't know, whatever. They can do pretty much what they want. Why is it not a coerced get? The Rambam says, in beautiful language, he says deep down, the guy wants to do what the Torah wants him to do. And if the beis din says he has to do a divorce, that's what the Torah wants him to do. And that's what his innermost recesses of his neshama want to do. He says the beating is just there to get rid of the Yetzer Hara. And very, very interesting. And what it's saying is the same idea. There is this nitzotz, the spark, the essence of a Jew, which can never be erased and never is erased. The Zohar and others call this, and I to this day I have a question about the Aramaic pronunciation, so if there's any Aramaic grammarians here, you can help me out. It says that there's something called the kista de chiyusa, the moisture of life. The Zohar says that when we go to sleep, it's like sleep is like a 60th of death. As you probably know. My roommates, it was 2/3. But in general, it's a 60th of death. The Zohar says that that even so, even though the person's like almost like appears to be, but there's a kista de chiyusa, there's I guess a moisture of life that's still there, right? And that's the idea, and every Jew has that. Bonim b'nei kel chai. Amazing. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, very famous Gemara. It says that regarding Achan. Achan was the one who looted Yericho, Moel Becherem, who transgressed the ban of looting of Yericho that Yeshua declared. And there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Chata Yisrael. Israel sinned. And the Gemara says, Amar Reb Abba bar Zavda, Afal pi shechata. Yisrael who? Even though he has sinned, he's still a Yisrael. And as Rashi puts it, Adayin Shem Kedushason Aleihem, the name of the Kedusha is still upon them. So Achan was the one where we learn this idea of Chata Yisrael, which is what the Rambam says as well. There's an amazing idea. I think I heard this from Reb Moshe, that Reb Chaim Soloveitchik once said, someone said Yemach Shemo about a certain Jew. It was a kofer, I mean, you name it, whatever, the standard stuff, right? And someone said Yemach Shemo. So Reb Chaim Brisker said, it's also to say that. It's against the halacha. And I said, why? He says, because there are geonim who hold that a mumar is not zakuk liyibum. If he's a mumar, an apikoros, a kofer, lama who's denied the whole Torah, and he dies, does his wife and brother have to marry? His widow and brother have to marry. So is a shitter in geonim that they don't. But the consensus of the Rishonim and the halacha is that indeed Yibum is still applicable here. Mumar zoikek liyibum. So that means, even though he was a mumar, he was a complete over the whole works, etc. Nevertheless, the Torah still says that his widow and the brother must marry. Why does the Torah say this? The Torah says, why? V'lo yimacheh shmoi mi Yisrael. His name should not be erased from Israel. So Reb Chaim said, if the Torah says, if the halacha is that a mumar zakuk liyibum, that a mumar has to do yibum because the Torah is concerned that his name should not be erased from the Jewish people, so how can you say Yemach Shemo? it's a classic Brisker Musar, right? The halacha is lo yemachesh shmo Yisrael. End of story. The Meshech Chochma points out, we say there's a pasuk kitira chamor sonacha roivetz tachas maso. When you see the donkey of your friend, of your enemy, crushed under its burden, so it says you must help him take the thing off the donkey. Now, it's interesting, later on in the Torah, sorry, this is in Kiseitze, Chamas Aracha, right? And it says also, Oyivcha, in Mishpatim, it says Oyivcha, the donkey of your enemy. So he says, interesting, the Meshech Chochma says, he says, what changed in the middle? He says that the rest of Klal Yisrael also did Averis. We did the Chet HaEgel. He says, so if now after the fact that we've all got Averis, if you see someone else doing an Avera, he says, you're not allowed to hate him. He says, because you're in the same boat. If you're at Tzaddik Gomor, you haven't got Averis, Soinach, right, etc., that's fine. But if not, he says, Kasher limtso kamoisoi, difficult to find someone like that. But I'll go further in that Gemara. The Gemara, that's a very interesting pasuk. Pasuk says, you see the donkey of your enemy, the one you hate, crushed under its burden. Azov tazov, you must help him. Now, when you take the burden off the donkey, there are two mitzvahs involved here. A, you are doing chesed to the Jew who owns the donkey by helping him with the burden. Number one. Number two, you're alleviating tsar balei chayim. You are alleviating the pain to the animal. The donkey, right, is crushed under its burden, so you're alleviating the pain. Now, there's another mitzvah which is to help someone, to help someone load up the donkey. Now, when you load up the donkey, you're not doing any favor to the donkey here. The donkey is not saying, oh, that's fantastic, right? It's like, it's Eeyore, oh, here we go, another, right? So, no, you're not getting it, right? But you're still doing a chesed to the other Jew. You're still doing the mitzvah of helping the other Jew. Now, what happens, the Gemara says in Bava Metzia, like this theoretical case, it's not so theoretical, could be, I have lifroik v'soine liton. You've got someone you like, and you have the opportunity to unburden his donkey. Double mitzvah. And you have someone who you hate, and you have the opportunity to help him load up his donkey. Whom should you give precedence? It's actually machlokas achronim, give him precedence, or just give one, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But the Gemara says, who should you help? So the Gemara says you should help the guy you hate first. Why? Kedei lakuf es yitzra, to overcome your evil inclination of hatred. Okay, very nice, very nice. The problem is, Tosfos points out, that the Gemara in Psachim says, who is this person that you hate? I mean, are you allowed to hate a fellow Jew? No. So how can the Torah refer to this guy as Sonacha, the one you hate? I mean, if you are illegally, sinfully hating a fellow Jew, you're probably not going to listen to this anyway. Right? So who is this hated person? Who is it? So the Gemara in Psachim says, very simple. It's someone who you witnessed doing a serious Aveira. And you rebuked him, according to many Rishonim, and he rejected it. And so such a person you're allowed to hate. No one else is allowed to because they don't know that he did this, and I'm only one witness, so I can't do anything. But I know that this guy did some serious stuff, and hence, hate him. So, that's the Gemara says in Psachim. So who are we talking about? Who is the hated person? One whom you are allowed to hate. And according to one Shita, you're obligated to. So Tosfos ask an obvious question. So why is it lakufes yitzro? Where is the overcoming of the Yetzer Hara? You're doing the right thing. Right? Why am I supposed to hate him? Why am I supposed to help him first? To overcome my evil inclination in which I hate him. I'm allowed to hate him. According to the Gemara in Psachim, he is someone you're allowed to hate. So, is the question clear? If the question's not clear, you won't, right? Question's clear? Okay. So, Tosfos answers very, very type of enigmatic answer. It's not clear at all. They say the following. Kaven shu sono, if you hate this guy, gam chaveiro soina osa, he'll hate you as well. Deceive, kamaim upon him, kain leva adam, la adam. As water reflects your face, So the other person can reflect what's in your heart. So he'll feel the hatred, and he'll in turn hate you. V'uba'in mitoich kach lidei sina gemura. As a result of this, they will come to complete hatred. V'shayach kfiyas hayetzer, and then it's possible to speak about overcoming your evil inclination. So we have, apparently according to Tosfos, there is a hatred which is okay, and there is complete hatred, sina gemura, which is not okay. That seems to be the deduction we would make. Now, if he refuses to help this guy, he only helps his friend, then the other guy will feel that hatred, he'll come to hate him, and then I will hate him with a sina gemura, complete hatred, and that's unacceptable. And that's why I have to help him to overcome that complete hatred. So, complete hatred, unacceptable. Some hatred, okay. Right? How do we understand this Tosfos? So my Chavrusa and I asked Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, and he pointed us to a Tanya, Perek Lamed Beis. The Tanya says the following. He says, this is Pshat and Tosfos. We also asked Rav Dov Schwartzman, and he said the same thing. We asked Rav Moshe and Rav Dov, right? Pshat and Tosfos, they both pointed us to the Tanya, Perek Lamed Beis. The Tanya says the following. He quotes the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, famous Mishnah, where the Mishnah says, Hevi mit Talmidav shel Aaron, you should be a student of Aaron, Oyev es Abrius, love people, and Oyev Shalom, Roidev Shalom, love peace, pursue peace, Oyev es Abrios, love people, Umakarvan LaTorah, bring them close to Torah. So the Tanya points out that brios, if you translate the word brios literally, what does it mean? Creatures. Brios, not with an aleph, brios, right? But creatures. So you should love creatures and bring them close to Torah. If you call someone a creature, is that a compliment? I mean, technically, creature means a created being. Brios are something which is nivra. So it's not an insult, but it is, right? I mean, it is, right? Because what it's saying is, the only positive thing you can say about this person is what? I mean, they're created by Hashem. I mean, that, right? On the Shidduch resume, all it says is created by God. Nothing else, right? And you say to someone, what's the matter? Are you getting picky? It's not enough. He's created by Hashem. Surely that, and he's 21. You know, so it should be enough, right? So what does it mean? So the Tanya says the following. He said what it means is even someone who's on such a low level that the only positive thing you can say regarding him is, but he was created by Hashem. Oyev es habrios, you still have to love him. Umakaravan l'Torah, and bring him close to Torah. Amazing diuk. But the Tanya goes on to say, he says, you know what? Gama makuravim etzlo. But even those people, people you know well, they're close to you. They're not completely, is it a Yiddish term, oisvarf or something like that? They're not completely out of the pale, right? And you hoichicham, and you rebuke them. V'loi shavu ma'avoy noseim, and they did not repent of their sin. I rebuked them. I did toichacha. They stayed where they said, yeah, go jump in the lake, Bech. Right. He says, mitzvah l'snoisam. So there's a mitzvah of hatred. Mitzvah la'avam gankein, but you're supposed to love them too. That's sina gemura means there's no love. Even those people that I'm allowed to, I reject, I rebuked him. We'll see soon that anyway, halacha, that's not so. But even those someone who I've rebuked him, and he rejected the rebuke, and he still does the aveira, and he's doing it intentionally and repeatedly, and I'm allowed to hate him. He says I have to love him as well. Shteihem emes. They're both true. Sina mitzad harasha behem, hatred of the evil in them, ve'ahava mitzad bechinas hatov haganuz shebehem, and love because of the good aspect which is hidden within them. Shu nitzotz elokush shebesoicham, the spark of godliness in them, hamachaye nafsham ha'elokis, which sustains their godly soul. So what is Tosfos saying? The Tosfos is saying this. If I don't help this guy, then I'm only displaying hatred without love. And that's sin of Gemura. And so therefore the Torah says, Yetzer, Kfias Yetzer is overcome your evil inclination and have lalav as well. So yes, the Gemara in Pesachim says the guy is a Rosha, he's an evil person. He says, doesn't mean I'm allowed to hate every aspect of him, total hatred. I have to love the good within him. I have to hate the bad, but love the good. It's an amazing thing. And I should point out, Lahalacha, the Chazon Ish cites this. Maram Lublin says that a person's really only called a Rosha if they have been rebuked. They've had toichacha. They've been rebuked and they rejected it. If they've never been rebuked, they are not. The name Rosha, evil, doesn't apply. Chavetz Chaim brings it in a sefer called Maganisa Tava at the end of Avos Chesed. But he adds one more thing. He says, nowadays, we don't know how to do toichacha. Okay, that's very interesting. Now let's do the math. You can only consider this person a rasha, evil, after he's had appropriate toichacha, appropriate rebuke. Nowadays, we don't know how to do rebuke properly. So therefore, is there anyone who you would look at as post-toichacha? No. Chazon Ish says, what it means is, the only time you consider someone post-toichacha, if a Beis Din said, look, enough effort has been expended on this person, we now consider him a Rasha. Until the point where there's a Psak Beis Din, that he's had all the effort, right? He's been to Gateways and to Project Inspire and to Aisha Torah and to Or Sameach and to Machon Shlomo and to Chappelle's and etc. and to Discovery, and he read Kellerman and he read David Gottlieb and he read Chapter, and he's like, right, etc. And he came to my shir, right, etc. And he's still doing Averis. Well, okay, the guy's a Rasha. But he says we cannot have the arrogance to say, what do you mean? I gave him toichacha and he's still a Rasha. He's still doing the wrong thing. Well, you think your toichacha is so awesome that a guy will do instant tshuva when they see it, when they hear it? Right? I mean, as the Gemara already says in Erchin, Gemara says no one really knows how to do toichacha, because I say, hey, there's a little bit of a splinter in your teeth. He says, oh yeah, there's a 2x4 right between your eyes. That's the Gemara says. Right? So that means that we really don't have appropriate, it doesn't mean that we're exempt from toichacha, we still have to do it. But it means, having tried, I cannot paskin that this guy is hopeless, that this guy is a loy sisla, that this guy is absolutely, that's over. Why? Because he never heard good toichacha. Who knows? Maybe if he'll meet the right person, maybe if he'll go to the right shir, maybe if he'll get into the correct taxi, he will change. You never know. So it's very difficult to have that psak. And you never know what will affect the person. Never know what will affect the person. There is a story, and I verified the details of this. There's a guy, Dave, who, he's now a rabbi, by the way, works for Aisha Torah. So Dave had been to Aisha Torah in the summer program, and he liked the idea of, so he didn't become frum, but he liked the idea of Shabbos. He felt that was an attractive concept. So he went back to the States and he started to try to keep Shabbos. But he had a hard time because he was not living in an area where there was a religious community. His parents were, to say the least, unenthusiastic. And he didn't really have any support whatsoever. So he tried for a few weeks, had a hard time. So one night, Friday night, Shabbos night, he's sitting there. He looks up and he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He didn't say HaKadosh, he said, God. He said, if I don't get a sign from you that you want me to keep Shabbos, I'm not doing it. I can't. It's too hard. So he says, so nothing happens. So he looks up and he says, I'm giving you till midnight. I'm not allowed to do this, by the way. But he did. At midnight, nothing happens. So he says, 15-minute extension. 12:15 a.m., Gurnish, nothing happens. So he picks up the remote. He says, that's it. No more Shabbos. Turns on the television. Now, it happened to be tuned to Dave Letterman's show, an American comedian. Dave Letterman was interviewing another American comedian by the name of Tom Hanks. I've actually seen the clip of this interview. Tom Hanks had just come back from Israel. And Dave Letterman asked Tom Hanks, so Tom, how was Israel? He says, great. Do you like the food? He says, yeah, fantastic people, great. He said, did you pick up any Hebrew? Tom Hanks said, well, yeah, it's Friday night tonight. In Israel they say, now this is 12:15. Dave puts on the television. Tom Hanks looks in the camera and he says, Shabbat Shalom, Dave. Dave looks up, not Dave Letterman, Dave looks up and he says, okay, I am convinced. Turns off the television, shouldn't have done, but okay. And he became from. So you can never know. It's unbelievable. That's the nitzotz, the spark, right? It wasn't toichacha. It was Tom Hanks saying Shabbat Shalom to Dave Letterman, for heaven's sakes. There's a guy in Toronto, a good friend of mine told me this, a guy in Toronto whose parents started getting to Yiddishkeit. He was not interested. You know, my parents are going crazy. I'm going to stay normal. Right? Anyway, so, but his parents managed to schlap him to their minyan one Shabbos morning. Because they said, look, we only have 9. We need you. He said, okay, fine. So he comes. But he read through the davening. He was a poetic type guy, and he was attracted by. He felt that the Tehillim are beautiful, which they are. Right? He felt that the tefillah was very nice. There was a Carlebach type. He liked this. He liked the music. He said, yeah, this is not so bad. Not so bad. So after that, he decided that he wouldn't keep Shabbos. He's not going to become religious, but he'll go to shul Shabbos. For him, that'll be going to shul Shabbos morning. He says, that's it. For me, that'll be perfect. I'll go to shul Shabbos morning. So anyway, a couple of weeks later, he was going to shul Shabbos morning. For him, that was Shabbos, and the rest of the time he'd do what he did. So one Friday night, he's running through the stations on the television, and he accidentally clicked on Canadian public television, which no person in their right mind would ever intentionally watch Canadian public television. I mean, you'd have to be a Canadian and be a complete nerd, right? I mean, the height of both. Anyway, so he accidentally clicks on Canadian public television, right? And what he sees? The Munkacher Rebbe. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but in the Spielberg Film Archive, there is a movie of the Munkacher Rebbe, his daughter's chasana. It's an amazing scene. Now, the Munkacher Rebbe agreed to have it filmed by the American film crew if he could give a message to the Jews of America without it being edited. And they said, yeah, okay. And he said, in that case, fine, you can film it. So he stands up on the carriage, and I've seen this as well. He stands up, and there's obviously he spoke in Yiddish, but there's subtitles in English so that this guy in Canada could understand it. And the Munkacher Rebbe says, I want to tell my brothers and sisters in America that if you want to be a Jew, you've got to keep Shabbos. And keeping Shabbos, it's not enough just to go to shul Shabbos morning. The guy sitting there, he says, okay. The Munkacher in the 1930s was speaking to a guy in Toronto in the 1990s and told him to keep Shabbos. And he did. Unbelievable. That's toichacha, but that's not the type of toichacha that we're going to be able to do. Right? We are not exempt. We have to do it anyway. And sometimes it can come from just weird sources. I just met a guy recently who's from, and he told me, he says, one of the turning points in my life, he says, I was at your house, I lived in Toronto for 4 years, and doing Or Sameach stuff there, and the guy came to our house for Shabbos, and my son Shmuley at the time was, I think, 3, probably around 3, and we're sitting at the table, Shabbos, and this guy says, look, he says, Rabbi, he says, I, like you, appreciate spirituality, but I want to find my own way. I don't really want to be, use Judaism and its techniques. I want to find my own way. So my son Shmuley, who was 3, looks at him and he says, if you want to climb a mountain, you need the correct equipment. Apparently my wife had read him a book about mountain climbing that morning. And he remembered the line. He's got an interesting mind. And he said it to the guy, and the guy looks at him. He says, yeah, it's a good point. That's a good point. And he started coming to our shul, educational minyan. It was unbelievable. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu watches out. Zera, as the Rambam put it, Zera Avraham eino kalo. The seed of Avraham will never ever be erased, and you can never escape from Yiddishkeit. And for us, we have to look at that good part in the person. The Rav Nachman of Breslov, an amazing statement this is in Likutei Moran in Torah Reish Pei Beis. It's one of my good friend Rabbi Rietti, who's speaking here tomorrow night, who's an expert in Breslov thought, told me this is probably the most important paragraph in Likutei Moran. Okay. So anyway, so he says the following. He says, Tzarich ladun es kol ha'odam lekaf zchus. You have to judge every person favorably. What does it mean, judge a person favorably? So he has got a little bit of a different understanding the way we normally think of it. Afilu mishu rosha gomor, even someone who's completely evil. Tzarich lechapes v'limtzo bo ezo tov, ezo ma'at tov. You have to find a little bit of good in that. You have to look into that person and see if you can find anything good whatsoever in that person. And sheba'oiso ma'at, that in that small area, eino rosha, he's not bad. He says, and every Jew has some area of their life, of their emotion, of their thought, of their philosophy, of their activities, etc., which is good. Everyone. Al yedei zeh shemoitze bo ma'at tov, and when you find that little bit of good in that person, v'danoiso lekaf zchus, and you judge him based on that good, al yedei zeh malo oso be'emes lekaf zchus, you're able to elevate him really to merit and to zchus. V'yachol la'shivoi b'tshuva, and then you can return him in true tshuva. He says you have to believe that the person has got within them some good. Everyone does. I was driving with a rabbi. We did a Shabbaton in Florida together. It was many years ago, and before there were GPSs. I picked him up. I rented a car, picked him up at another terminal at the airport. I had a map printed out of where we were supposed to go. I clearly made two very stupid mistakes in terms of the directions, and we end up in a neighborhood where it was not safe, to say the least. And he looks at me and he says, tell me something. Does your mother love you? Now, there's no doubt in my mind he was fulfilling what Rav Nachman of Breslov said. He was finding the one part of good in me, that I indeed was loved by my mother. Alei Hashem, right? And he is right. But when you find the good within that person, and he says, then you can really return them. Then you have to see the good in them. Like the Tanya said as well, as the Gross said, and all of them, that you're still b'chuyev mitzvahs. So you tell me in Lo Dati Azma, so what? It's the same message from all of them. And he says, by the way, V'chein tzarich ha'adam limtzo gam ba'atzmo. Reb Nachman says you've got to find that in yourself as well. If you want to really do tshuva and change, you've got to look at yourself and find the good in yourself as well. The one area, don't look at yourself as lost, right? Yiush. Find the area where you are good. He says once you find that area where you're good, he says then it can grow from that to something which is very beautiful, very eternal. And the Gemara says in famous Mishnah in Sanhedrin, which says that talks about Klal Yisrael Yesh, Kol Yisrael Yesh and Chelek L'Olam Haba, every Jew has a portion in the world to come, and then it details those who have lost their portion. Elu she'ein lahem Chelek L'Olam Haba. These are those who have no portion. The Gemara goes on, however, later and says, Dorshei Reshumois hayu oimrim kulam boim L'Olam Haba. The Dorshei Reshumois, those who expounded on Reshumois means faint inscriptions, said all of them come to Olam Haba. What does that mean? Sort of Tzadok of Lublin, he says the following. Dorshei Reshumois means, he says, even sometimes when something departs from somewhere, it leaves a trace, that's the word, a trace, it leaves a trace. Forensic, right? There's always going to be any interaction, going to leave a trace. A little bit of hair, a little bit of skin, a little fingerprint, that's it. He says, so even someone who's a choita, a sinner, even someone who it looks like the Kedusha has left them, Dorshei Reshumois, those who could see even the slightest hint, they said, no. it's still enough for them to return in tshuva. Dorshei Reshumos, that's how he puts it. Al yedei oisan chaton nistalka shorish hakadusha, aval mikol makam harashimu nishar. The trace, the sign, when you write on a pad, you look at and you rip off the top page. Underneath, on the next page, you can see a little bit the marks that the pen made on that pad. That's the Reshimu. And Klal Yisrael has that. And the Ramchal points out, by the way, he says we have a physical component which will never be destroyed, from which Hashem will reconstruct Tchias HaMeisim, the Etzem Haluz. He says, but we also have that Reshimu, that Kista de Chiyusa, the moisture of life, the remnant, the trace, that's where Hashem will rebuild the Neshamas from. The Ramchal points out, by the way, the same is true within Klal Yisrael. The Koisel, he says, is the Etzem Haluz of Klal Yisrael, from which will be rebuilt the Beis HaMikdash. And he says the Shechina, which is still at the Koisel, has not left, is the Reshimu, the trace element of that Kedusha that was once in the Beis HaMikdash, from which Hashem will rebuild everything. Very beautiful analogy. That like in the human, so also the Shir Koima of Klal Yisrael and the Koisel Ma'aravi. And by the way, it's not by coincidence that we learn this from Achan. Achan, Sefer Seder Hayom, the Kolbos says that the first paragraph of Aleinu was written by Yeshua. And the Seder Hayom says that the second paragraph was written by Achan, who signed his name in the first three words. Al, Kain, Nekave. Therefore we have hope. Ayin, Chaf, Nun. Al, Kain, Nekave, we have hope. So, what's Pshat? Ramosh Shapiro said, because very simple. From Achan, we learn that Afal Pi Shechata, Yisrael who? Even though he has sinned as a Yisrael. What better Al Kain Nekave could there be? We have hope. We can have hope because Achan taught us, no matter how serious the Aveira, no matter how, even HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, you sinned, but you're a Jew. Al Kain Nekave. And the Kav, we know the word Tikva, that hope, Al Kain Nekave, from the word Kav Tikva, is used to also mean in the Sefer Yeshua, Tikvas Hashoni, that when Rachav ties a thread of red to the windows so that when the Jews invade, they'll save her and the family in her house, that's Tikva. So the word Tikva is related to the word Kav, which means a thread or a string or a line. Because Tikva is a hope that connects me to my destiny, connects me to where I am. There's a beautiful vort I heard in the name of Hasidic Rebbe, I do not remember who it was, who actually says that is when you lose something, even though it's not in your possession, even though it's not under your control, if you haven't given up on it, you've still got tikva, a hope that you'll get it back. So you're connected to it by a line, a kav of hope, like connects you to the object. If I find it, I've got to give it back to you. But if I find the object in a circumstance in which there is no hope that you'll get it back, in which case you've given up hope, you dropped it, Grand Central Station, 5 o'clock Monday, on the platform, most likely, Yush, you've given up hope, and therefore that line, the hope that connects you to the object has been severed. It's been cut. Achan tells us that the line that connects us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is never cut, never severed. That kav is still kav, and is still, therefore, we still have tikva, and therefore al-kain, and therefore nekav elacha Hashem Elokeinu, that Hashem, we have hope that once again you'll restore all of Klal Yisrael to our pristine state where we should be, to our situation of B'nai Kel Chai, the sons of Hashem, B'nai Ma'alya, beautiful, excellent children of Hashem, which is what all of Klal Yisrael is, which our obligation is to reach out to all of those Jews, to reach out to each other, and no matter where they are, to understand Al-Kei Nekaveh, they're still connected, they're still Jewish, Shem Kedushosan Alehem, B'nai Kel Chai, and Halavai, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will show us that in front of our eyes, and Enes Sirenu, B'shuv Chal Sion Barachamim, Meher V'yameinu, Amen.
Shemi Egenshir, Terem Moses Boston, I'd give a big yashakayach to Rabbi Becher for the inspiring drosha. Rabbi say to sponsor one of the shirim, have the great schus. Call Egenshir Terem 718-851-8651. Email tapecenter@yeshiva.com. We'd like to give a big yashakayach to Mr. and Mrs. Dovi Nierenberg for exclusively sponsoring tonight's shir. CDs will be available shortly. Chananya ben Akash Shemar Tzakadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakes Es Yisrael Afiker Hibalim Torah Mitzvos Shenem Alei Chofes Aman Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.